Hi, get ready to make Ciao Giulia, a simple single-breasted collarless jacket with a modern side panel construction and unique tilted pockets. If you're new to sewing, start with boiled wool for a no-finish garment, no hemming, overlocking or facings. Otherwise, watch to the end to see how you can complete this jacket in other fabrics like cottons, linens or boucles by adding facing to complete this lovely little piece. So to start, we're going to prepare the front darts. So on the wrong side of the fabric, that's the reverse side of the front of the jacket piece, we're going to fold the fabric so that the dart legs meet. And we're going to pin in place, ensuring that the markings align perfectly. So we're pinning along this area. Then we are going to start to stitch with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, always starting with a back stitch at the bottom to secure our stitching. And as we get towards the top of the dart, that's the top, we're going to gradually taper our stitching so that we're sewing right at the edge of the fold as you reach the tip of the dart. At the bottom edge of the dart, carefully snip a V-shaped incision into the dart intake. This removes bulk so the dart won't peek out or create a bump at the bottom of the jacket, and then press with your iron the seam flat. Now, with the front side of our jacket facing upwards, you can see the two markings that we've previously drawn onto the fabric for the top position of the pocket where the pocket should finish. We're pinning that in place, double checking that both the pockets are in a symmetrical and at the correct tilted angle. We're going to sew around the edge of the pocket with a 0.5 centimeter seam allowance. Remember always to start with a back stitch and finish with a back stitch at the top and of both sides of the pocket opening, as these are the areas under the most pressure. Now we're placing the two back jacket pieces right sides together, and we're going to pin along the edge of the centre back. We are making sure the notches are matching up, and then we're going to start to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, starting from the centre back neckline and down to the bottom. Remember to always secure at the beginning and the end with a back stitch to ensure a durable and secure finish. Now we're trimming a small triangle away from the top of the jacket and from the bottom of the jacket seam that we've just sewn at the centre back, and we're pressing open our seam. Now we're going to match and pin the side panel with the centre back pieces right sides together, carefully matching up the notches. So we're pinning along this edge, and then we're going to start to stitch with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. We're starting at the top, and there's a small pointed area edge that is actually, we're pulling out slightly, and we're starting to stitch, back stitch always to start with, and then we're stitching with a 1 centimeter seam allowance to the bottom of the hemline, where we'll also finish with a back stitch. Now we're going to trim again away at the base of our jacket, the small snip of fabric away. We're opening and pressing open the seam that we've just stitched. Now with the back and the front of the jacket right sides together, we're pinning along the shoulders, and we're going to stitch with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, always starting with a back stitch and finishing with a back stitch. Where the seam meets the neckline, we're going to trim away again a small piece of fabric and press open both seams of the shoulders. Now with right sides together, we're going to attach the front and the back side seams. So we are matching up the notches carefully, and we are pinning along this edge. We're going to start at the top at the armhole opening, and with a 1 centimeter seam allowance we're going to sew down to the bottom hemline. Always remember to start and finish with a back stitch. As we did with the other previous seams, we're going to snip a small V away of excess fabric at the base of the jacket at the hemline, and then we're going to press open our seam. Now we're going to take the two parts of our sleeve and right sides together we're pinning these, carefully matching up the notches. Once we've pinned one of the sides, we're going to then continue and pin the other side of the sleeve so that we've now constructed our sleeve. We will sew along the pinned area with a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and we're always going to start, as I say, and finish with a back stitch. Now for a clean finish at the bottom of the sleeve, that's the cuff area, we're going to snip away a small edge of excess fabric from the seam allowance. This prevents any bulk from showing at the wrist when the jacket is finished, and we're using an ironing arm or sleeve board to press open and flat the seams that we've just sewn. Now with the jacket wrong side out and the sleeve right side out, we're going to slide the sleeve inside the jacket armhole so that right sides are together. We're going to align the sleeve seams with the corresponding jacket seams, and we're going to match up the notches and the seams, and we're going to pin thoroughly around the entire circle of the armhole. We're then going to stitch around the armhole with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. There's a point where you'll find that there's like a little dog's ear, or it's called dog's ear, or a small triangular area that's overlapping the raw edge. We're going to trim that back, and then it's also good practice to use a back stitch at the very bottom of the armhole for extra strength. For those making in boiled wool, congratulations, you've now finished Ciao Giulia. We're just pressing the final part of the sleeve seam that we've just sewn, and the garment is ready to wear. It's been a very simple make with no hemmings, overlocking or facings necessary due to the nature of the fabric. If you want, you can still carry on and watch how we'll show you how to do the facings for the other fabrics like linens or cottons, because this would also give your boiled wool jacket a more structured finish. Now we're going to assemble our facing, and the goal here is to create one continuous loop or circle that will sit inside the jacket. So we're going to start with the facing of the shoulder that we're attaching to the back neck facing, and we're pinning right sides together and sewing with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. We're going to take the other shoulder facing and attach this to the back neck facing, again with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. And then we're going, at the bottom of our front facing, we're going to attach the side facing, again right sides together. We're going to sew these with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. First one side of the side facing to the front facing, and then the other side of the side facing, again with the front facing right sides together. And then to finish, we're going to attach the back bottom facing, and that will be attached to the side facings. When we attach one side and we finish by attaching the other side, we have then completed our circle and have all pieces attached together. Now we need to press open all the seams that we have just sewn of our facing, so we're pressing these flat with our iron. Now we're going to pin the assembled facing and the jacket, pinning everything right side together, and we're aligning the neckline, the front openings and the bottom hem, and we're matching the shoulders and the centre back markings carefully. Then we're going to start to sew all the way around the perimeter of the jacket, up the front, around the neck, down the other front and along the hem, using a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Now we're going to snip the corners at the bottom, front and the neckline to remove any bulk. We're also going to clip into the curves of the neckline every 2 centimetres so the fabric can stretch and lay flat when turned. Now we're pulling the corners out of our facing, so we've turned them around to the right side and we're using an awl to pull the corners out. And then we're now ready to start to press our facing and the seams that we've just sewn. So we're first of all going to press flat the seam of our facing. So we're pressing this flat all the way around the jacket, and then we're going to start to press the facing of our jacket so that the outer edge is crisp and flat. Working from the right side of the jacket, we're going to sew a decorative top stitch of 0.5 centimeters away from the edge. This anchors the facing securely and prevents it from rolling outwards. Because of the facing, your bottom hem is already encased and finished. We will finish by stitching along the top edge of the facing to provide a second line of stitching. If you prefer, you could also hand stitch the hem in place on the inside. So now we're bringing together the two short ends of the sleeve facing, right sides together, and we will sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. You've pressed your seam of your cuff facing flat, we're ready to attach it to the sleeve. So we're pinning right sides together, the facing of the sleeve with the bottom edge of the sleeve, and we're going to stitch all the way around the edge with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now pull the facing to the inside and press the edge flat. Now we're finishing with a decorative top stitch along the edge of the sleeve. We're sewing with a 0.5 seam allowance like we've done with the bottom of the jacket. To finish, we're now going to block the facing hem of our sleeve. Like we did with the bottom of the jacket, we're going to sew along on the inside of the sleeve. We're sewing along the edge of the facing. Congratulations. So for those who've opted to finish their jacket with a facing, whether it be a boiled wool for a more constructed winter jacket or a linen or cotton for a nice summer jacket, well done and happy sewing with your next project. Keep making more of Ciao Giulia. It's a great piece.